The Hope Boat by Gabino Iglesias. Sandra knows the way to the beach. She has no clue how long it will take her to get there on foot. It's probably only 10 or 12 miles from her house. Puerto Rico is only 100 miles long by 35 miles wide, so everyone is somewhat close to the beach. But 10 or 12 miles on foot is still a lot of miles. Sandra used to walk almost 4 miles in just under an hour. But that was before she got pregnant, back when her friend Margaret was all about power walking and salads. It might take her more than 15 minutes to complete a mile now. Maybe 20, a little longer. That would make it a 3-hour walk, give or take. That would be under normal circumstances. Circumstances haven't been normal for a while now. Make it 4 hours then, but go. Go now. You have time. The thought scares her. Going anywhere now is like venturing out into a jungle full of predators, psychos, scavengers, sick people who have lost their minds. They're all out there. So it could be worth a shot if the information she received is true. It's early now. She must be at the beach by midday. She wants to hop on the rescue boat. Although rescue is too big a word. Felt like an impossible word. Something that should be cut from the dictionary. Rescue boat sounds like someone is in control. Tell them you have hope. That's what Mercedes said. Hope is a good word here. Hope boat sounds more accurate than rescue boat. Could also be desperate boat, last chance boat, boat to freedom. Those are better. The voice in Sandra's head sounds a lot like her mother. It's been there all her life, but it's been much more present lately. It's her only companion. Sandra is glad for its presence, but she often wonders if she's losing her mind. The way things have gone, it wouldn't surprise her. The trip from Sandra's house to the beach was always a joyful one, but thinking about it now hurts. Baby Angie usually wore her favorite bathing suit, a bright pink one that was the cutest thing Sandra had ever seen. Had a circle of tiny blue fish on the chest, always made Sandra think of her beautiful daughter as a minuscule superhero. Super baby. Devourer of cookies. Her superpower? A natural aversion to naps, a 1,000,000-watt smile, more energy than the Energizer Bunny. This trip won't have any of that. The idea of staying in a house with 2 bodies, no food, no water, no electricity, no chance of being rescued is even less appealing. So, 4 hours. That's a long walk, but she can do it. A long walk is nothing. If what Mercedes told her is true. Mercedes, Sandra's neighbor from 3 doors down, has knocked on her door the night before. Sandra had panicked for a second before Mercedes identified herself. Sandra had been convinced Mercedes was immune to the disease, just like her. Their entire neighborhood had succumbed in a matter of days, but they hadn't. The more people died, the more they talked, checked on each other, shared news and food. Mercedes was a very positive person. She'd helped a lot when Miguel died. Mercedes' own husband, Roberto, died 2 days later. She dragged him out and buried him in their yard. I don't want his angry spirit haunting my dreams, she said to Sandra afterward, while she was scraping dirt from under her nails. Men are moody. Dead men are no different. She tried to smile through the tears then, a bit of gallows humor. All she managed was a strange twitch of her lips that spoke more of devastation than mirth. Now it was just the 2 of them, Sandra and Mercedes, a few doors from each other, surviving alone but together. The moment Sandra opened the door, she knew she was wrong. Mercedes, in her early 40s, short and stocky, with dark skin and a beautiful mane of black curls framing a pretty face, looked like a ghost of her former self. Her face was bloated and strangely pale. She had dark bags under her eyes that seemed ready to pop. Her face and neck were slick with that shiny, oily sweat that the sick were always covered in. Mercedes had knocked on the door in the early afternoon and called out her name. By the time Sandra reached the door, her friend had stepped back almost 10 feet. She was shivering from the fever, had a glistening line of snot covering her upper lip. I got it, said Mercedes. It was obvious, but the words still felt like a gut punch to Sandra. Oh, Mercedes. Mercedes looked at Sandra's arm and then at her legs. Sandra knew what she was looking for, filled her eyes with tears again. Baby Angie, Mercedes asked, her voice low like she was afraid of waking her up. Sandra couldn't answer. She shook her head, tears now running down her face. "I'm so sorry," said Mercedes. The last word had been buried under so much emotion that it sounded like something else, a small animal drowning instead of a word. For a moment both women stood there looking at each other. All the things they wanted to say were left unsaid. Maybe that was for the better. Nothing reveals the uselessness of words quite like the presence of death, riding its black horse silently down your street with a scythe at the ready. Mercedes was dying. Sandra was surrounded by death. The enormity of their pain silenced them. Looking at each other was enough. "I came to tell you something," said Mercedes. She sniffled and wiped her face with her hand before continuing. "I got a call 3 days ago from my mom back home. She said whole families survived in the Dominican Republic. She told me they all moved to Punta Cana and they've built a place there, a refuge. There's a lot of food and stuff from the hotels there. They've been sending fishing boats over to pick up survivors from the beaches and a few other places. For a price, obviously. My mom, she got me a ticket for tomorrow at midday. You should go." "No, I can't do that," said Sandra. She wanted to say that was Mercedes' ticket, her opportunity to get out. But the woman would probably be dead before she reached the coast, even if she found a car to get her there. They both knew it. Turning down the opportunity was an instinct from a time when the world still worked. They were standing in front of each other, with tears running down their faces and a decomposing world around them. Turning it down made no sense. The social contract was no longer in place. "I won't make it," said Mercedes. "We both know it. Just go. You can walk to there from here. Leave early tomorrow. When the boat comes, someone will come to the beach. Tell them you have hope. That's the password. They'll take your temperature. If you're still fine, they'll take you to Punta Cana." Sandra nodded. More tears came, and she didn't know who they were for. They could be for Mercedes because she was dying. They could also be for baby Angie, or for Miguel, or for the countless dead neighbors in all the dark houses up and down the street that had turned into graves, or for herself. "Thank you," said Sandra. She didn't believe it. Whole families, food. It had to be a rumor. But she couldn't tell Mercedes that. Didn't snatch a dying woman's last dream from her. I'm so sorry about baby Angie," said Mercedes, her voice cracking again. There could be no hug, and saying goodbye would hurt too much. So Sandra was relieved when Mercedes turned and walked away, grabbing her head and grunting as she went. Sandra closed the door and stood there a minute, thinking about what Mercedes had told her. It couldn't be. But what if it was? Tell them you have hope. The smell smacked her in the face a few moments after she closed the door. Decay, rotting flesh, bodily fluid soaking into her bed, through her mattress, dripping on the floor. Like every other house out there, Sandra's house contained dead bodies. In her bedroom was her husband, Miguel. He'd gone out one morning a few days ago to see if he could find some food. He'd come back a few hours later, tired and complaining of a headache. The fever started soon after. That night he started talking about his brother Tomas, who died 10 years ago in a car crash. The sweating and the headaches were horrible, but they didn't last long. He died in the middle of the night, calling for his brother. Sandra had been sitting right outside their bedroom, listening to him through the doors and praying baby Angie wouldn't catch the sickness from her own father. After Miguel went quiet, she checked in on him. He looked bloated and shiny. Liquid was coming from his mouth and nose. He wasn't breathing or complaining. He wasn't talking about his dead brother. He would never do any of those things or anything else, ever again. Sandra's heart cracked in half, and she fell to her knees a few feet from the bed she had shared with Miguel for 9 years. After a while, baby Angie cried. Sandra got up and went to her. She held her daughter and caressed her head, wanting to apologize for the way things had turned out. An hour later, baby Angie finally fell asleep again, so Sandra returned to her room. She didn't want to touch Miguel, so she grabbed some clothes from the dresser and her toiletries from the bathroom, stuffed them in the traveling backpack she kept under her side of the bed. Then she grabbed Miguel's gun from the closet, a small revolver in a leather holster he'd inherited from his father. From her nightstand, she took her mother's old rosary and the 2 novels she was trying to read whenever baby Angie took a nap and she wasn't too tired. Stephen King's The Dark Half and John Grisham's A Time to Kill. With her backpack full and her heart empty, Sandra walked out into the hallway and closed the door to her bedroom for the last time. The following day felt like an agonizing performance. Sandra took care of baby Angie and pretended her father wasn't rotting in their bedroom while her daughter played with her food, blissfully oblivious to the crumbling world around her. The sun was going down when baby Angie started crying. Her face started swelling soon after. Sandra touched her lips to her daughter's forehead. She was burning up. No, 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 please, God, no. Sandra cried and prayed and held her mother's rosary against her daughter's bloated face. But God was tending to the apocalypse, and her prayers went unanswered. Baby Angie's fever got worse. She cried desperately and then became strangely calm, as if accepting her fate. Sandra kept talking to her. "You're going to be okay, baby," she said through more tears. "You're going to sweat the fever out and feel much better in the morning." Every lie tasted sour. Every minute was torture. Baby Angie looked at her mother imploringly for a while, but Sandra could do nothing except spit lies at her in a soothing voice. A few hours later, Sandra's beautiful baby daughter started looking around the room as if searching for someone, as if searching for God. She was dead the following morning. When pain and grief pile on top of more pain and grief, and sometimes the only coping mechanism left is to welcome a deep sense of numbness and concentrate on breathing, on surviving one more minute, even if you're not sure why we want to stay alive. That was what Sandra did. She sat on the sofa and cried until she felt separate from her body. Then she cried some more. Then she fell asleep. The next day went by in a blur. She drank some water and tried to eat some crackers at some point, but that was it. The rest was hours that went by in a flash and minutes that stretched out forever. Her pain was a wave that crested and crested but never broke. Her eyes hurt from crying. So did her stomach. And her grief wouldn't stop growing, like a crescendo that builds until it's so loud and fast that human ears can no longer hear it. A few times the revolver popped into her head. It was in her backpack. One bullet was all it would take. Quick and easy. Mostly painless if she did it right. But she couldn't. She refused to give up. At some point in the afternoon, Sandra went into her daughter's room. A few flies circled over baby Angie's crib. The buzzing was the most horrific sound Sandra had ever heard. She slammed the door shut and screamed until she felt the metallic taste of blood flooding into her mouth from her ruined throat. In the middle of that second night, after losing her husband and her daughter in less than 2 days, Sandra realized she was still feeling fine. No fever. No pain other than in her throat. No headache. No aches anywhere. Nothing. Her husband and daughter were dead. But she was still alive, and for the moment healthy. Back when the sickness started, the news had said everyone who got it died from it. Right before the TV and radio went off the air, they then said that was wrong. Some people never caught it. Less than 1% of the population could be exposed to it and not die. No one knew how immunity worked or for how long, but it seemed to be true. They were calling those on the island who didn't catch it elegidos, the chosen ones. Sandra felt like she'd been chosen, but by some cruel god, curious to see how much agony one person could stand. That was the first night. There were no screams or gunshots or the sound of cars trying to outrun the nightmare that had killed almost everyone. With the electricity gone, not even the hum of the refrigerator's motors filled the quiet inside the house. Outside, insects and the incessant song of the coquillas filled the night. At some point, something scratched the house's door. Sandra stayed on the sofa and didn't even bother to take Miguel's revolver out of the backpack. When the sun came out, Sandra stepped outside to make sure the world was still there. The street was quiet and empty. Dead. Dew on the grass felt like an insult. few birds were making a racket on the neighbor's trees. There were some scratches on her door, big ones. Sandra had eaten something and then cried for a while. That was when Mercedes had shown up. Her neighbor, who was dying, had thrown a possibility at Sandra's feet. And now that she had nothing to lose and no reason to stay in a house that had become a tomb for what she'd loved the most in this life, Sandra wondered what it would be like to go. Tell them you have hope. Now the moment had come. All that's left is for her to start walking. Sandra feels like she doesn't have any hope left, but something is pushing her to go. She's standing next to the door. Her backpack contains her clothes, 2 books, some food, 2 bottles of water, and a small revolver. It's nothing and everything she has. On her feet are the tennis shoes Miguel got her after baby Angie came home, and she started complaining that she wanted to start walking again to lose a small pouch the baby had left behind. She didn't even think about packing. The backpack was more or less ready. All she did was add the food and water. With that done, there's nothing between Sandra and the dead world except the door with the large scratches on it. Just go. The voice is there again. It's strong. It feels right. It's the only thing she has left. Sandra looks at her watch, a small Seiko Miguel got her for Christmas. It's 8:40 a.m. She has enough time, but not enough to waste. She opens the door and stands there for a moment. She wants to run back in and say goodbye to her husband, to kiss her baby daughter one last time. Then she thinks about flies crawling over baby Angie's face and shuts the door. None of this is fair. She doesn't deserve this. None of them do. Sandra wipes the tears off with her t-shirt and starts walking toward the beach, toward hope. She doesn't look at Mercedes' house as she walks by, but she mumbles a prayer for her friend's soul. The first mile or so is good, comfortable. The sun is out. Sandra feels tired, but she knows it's from bad nutrition and lack of sleep, not from the sickness. She keeps her eyes on the road as she walks. She ignores the bodies on the sidewalk and gives a wide berth to the ones on the street. Don't look, don't look, don't look. Sandra takes quick glances at some of the bodies despite the voice. Every single one is a shock. Every single body on the ground or in a car is someone's son or daughter, someone's significant other or best friend or sibling, someone's parent or caregiver. Every untimely death is devastating. It's impossible not to feel sadness and anger about each of them. The birds are having a feast. They sound angry when Sandra walks by. The vultures beat their large, dark wings and make sounds that let her know she's not welcome to share their banquet. One of them comes at her aggressively and then goes back to eating. It's enough to make Sandra take off her backpack, look for the revolver, take it out of its leather holster, put it in her jeans so she can get to it faster. The bodies are everywhere. Some of them are old, but some are fresh. Some are missing limbs or have strange wounds that resemble shark bites. The bite marks make Sandra think about the noises she heard last night and the weird scratches on her door. The strangely sweet stench of death permeates everything. She can't be out here at night. She must make it to the damn boat. The Hope boat. Sandra walks a little faster. The metal of the gun is strangely cool. It feels like a small reassurance against the soft flesh of her belly. Baby Angie. Sandra touches her empty stomach right next to the gun. The tears come again. She rubs the wetness out of her eyes and tries to think about the future. The present is too big and loud to ignore. The recent past is a demon howling in her soul, endless cacophony of wailing voices trapped inside her that beat against her skull at all times. Sandra looks up at the clouds. The sky is perfectly blue, like it doesn't care about what goes on underneath it. A gentle breeze blows. A nearby tree sways. Sandra looks at it, begging it to take away some of her pain. The tree sways again in response, but her pain remains untouched, slicing to her core as she walks. Sandra looks at the road ahead. Maybe her future is at the end of that road, where the sand meets the ocean. But first, she must get there. Sandra walks and walks. The tennis shoes are good. Nothing hurts, nothing rubs her the wrong way. She walks past rotting bodies and scorched or abandoned cars. She walks past broken and forgotten things. Pieces of a radio, a brown shoe, a kitchen knife, an open briefcase with some papers still inside it, a bicycle tire, a toothbrush, a book for children with a small bear wearing a blue tutu on the cover. She walks past houses that are full of dead people. Some have their doors open. Scavengers were common in the first few days. She wonders how many of these houses have little beds and cradles with... No. Sandra shuts that thought down immediately. No good will come of it. The things we try to silence inside ourselves are usually the ones that scream the loudest. Sandra can't help but think of millions of cradles across the world, all of them dead, bloated babies inside. All of them covered with flies, soon after, full of squirming maggots feasting on the flesh of those who were supposed to be the future. Those who were the apple of someone's eye. Those who made the world better just by being in it, with their big smiles and little hands and pure hearts. Baby Angie. Tired and broken, Sandra lets the memories flood in. Baby Angie playing. Baby Angie giggling. Baby Angie squeezing handfuls of mashed potatoes, her dirty little face full of glee. Baby Angie splashing in the tub. Each memory is a gem covered in thorns that fill her heart while ripping it apart. Half an hour later, Sandra starts thinking about the possibility of finding the boat and being taken to a better place, to a new community. Maybe there she could find hope again. A big mongoose interrupts her thoughts. It walks out from behind the burned metallic skeleton of an overturned van that sits in the middle of the road. It's as big as a small dog. It's the biggest Sandra's ever seen. It looks swollen, clearly infected, saliva and something thicker falling from its mouth. Sandra stops walking, keeps her eyes on the animal. The mongoose makes that little growling thing they do. It's a deep primal sound that sends a shiver down Sandra's spine despite the heat. Every instinct in her body tells her to turn and run. Then she remembers the gun. Sandra slowly brings her right hand up and pulls the gun from her waist. The mongoose hisses and walks away before Sandra has time to aim. She's glad. Infected or not, she didn't want to shoot it. She watches as the animal trots over a front yard, disappears around the house. 2 weeks ago, she wouldn't have thought she would ever touch Miguel's gun. She didn't even want it in the house. Then everything collapsed, and she watched as people turned into savages, stealing, breaking into homes, running around in absolute anarchy, and slaughtering each other in the street. Now she's sure she will pull the trigger. About half a mile later, the residential part of town ends. Sandra walks onto a much larger road. This one will take her to the beach. She's halfway there. The thought of reaching the beach injects a bit of energy into her system. Sandra speeds up a bit, happy to no longer be surrounded by houses full of dead people. But the big avenue is no better. Cars are piled everywhere. Many of them contain bodies. The stench is even worse than it was before. Here it is also mixed with the smell of gasoline and charred things. A while later, the driver's door of a black Lincoln Town car opens about 20 feet in front of Sandra, and a man stumbles out. He's wearing dirty jeans and no shirt or shoes. He looks like a corpse that's been in the water for too long. He takes a few steps toward Sandra. "Stop," Sandra says. Fear has made her voice weak. The screaming from the previous night isn't doing her any favors. The man snarls, shakes his head, and moves toward her. The oily sweat and swollen face are clear signs he's infected, but it still takes a moment for Sandra to make up her mind. The shot is too loud. Feels like Sandra split the day in half. It pings against the car. He keeps walking. Sandra takes a breath and aims again. The second shot is just as loud. There's no metallic ping. It hits the guy in the stomach. He falls to his knees and grunts. Sandra squeezes the trigger one more time. The left side of the man's face explodes in a puff of red and pink. Sandra walks around the man, making sure he's not moving. Her hands are shaking. "You killed a man." The voice doesn't sound panicky or judgmental. Sandra ignores it and keeps walking past more cars, more bodies, more destruction. The big avenue bends left before you see the beach. There's a Blockbuster on the corner before you have to turn. Sandra can see the blue of its marquee from where she's standing. She's close to the beach. Sandra looks at her watch. 10:15 a.m. She's going to make it. She takes a moment to drink some water and eat a few crackers. An uneventful hour later, Sandra is at the beach. There are no bodies on the beach. She's grateful for that. The ocean is a darker blue than the sky. A few white clouds hang over the ocean. The palm trees and the sand and the few white clouds paint a pretty picture. For a while, Sandra sits near the ocean and allows her surroundings to dim the horror in her head. The horizon is an unperturbed line. By noon, it remains the same, untouched, empty, unbroken. By 1 p.m., Sandra begins to wonder what midday might mean to other people. At 2:30 p.m., she gets up and pees behind a palm tree, looking around before she does, even though she hasn't seen a soul since the sick man she shot on the road. Time keeps on keeping on. 2:55 p.m. Sandra gets up and walks the length of the beach, scouting the horizon for a boat. 3:17 p.m. The waves are never quiet. Birds make noises from time to time. A small crab makes a mad dash to some unknown destination. The world is dead, but life goes on here and there. An insect, a bird, palm trees. The rock keeps spinning without people. Makes Sandra think about what the world would look like with everyone gone, not even a single survivor. It's easy to imagine it now. All she has to do is look around. All the emptiness fills her with a new kind of sadness. We're nothing but cosmic dust floating in an infinite beam of light. 4 p.m. Anxiety tickles Sandra's heart with a feather like a scalpel. 4:25 p.m. Sandra walks the beach again. She remembers baby Angie's pink bathing suit with a circle of tiny blue fish. She thinks about grabbing the gun, walking into water until it reaches her waist, then blowing her brains out. She thinks about her body sinking, becoming one with the ocean, turning into sand, her particles living forever in this gorgeous place. 4:43 p.m. Desperation sets in. 5:12 p.m. You messed up. The voice doesn't sound like her mother now. It sounds like an angry demon. You killed a man. 6:02 p.m. Sandra is sitting again. Midday, no matter how you think of it, is gone. The sun has started moving down. The beach is not so big that Sandra would have missed a boat, especially not one with a motor. It all makes sense. There is no boat. Of course there is no boat. There never was. Mercedes' mother didn't buy a ticket for her daughter. She bought a ticket to a dream. There is no boat because people are dead everywhere. There is no boat because it was a lie someone told Mercedes' mom. Because people can be good to each other when things go bad, like she and Mercedes had been to each other. People can also be awful when things go bad, like now. The sunset is an explosion of neon orange, splashes with purple at its edges. The ocean keeps singing its endless song, the waves worrying about nothing, as their unceasing rhythm caresses the shore. And the Caribbean night comes at you fast, almost aggressively, like a warning. Sandra drinks the last of her water and eats the last stale cracker. She has two options now. She can turn around and try to walk back home. There's nothing waiting for her there except the rotting bodies of her daughter and her husband. But home is always home. Maybe she can wait and see where things go. Maybe enough people survive and they start again. Maybe the government finds a cure soon. She can wait. She can scavenge. She still has a few bullets left. She can put duct tape around baby Angie's door and her bedroom door to keep the smell under control. The second option is to walk into the ocean. Maybe at the bottom of the ocean, away from people, she can find some hope. Sandra stands up and starts walking.